The darkness before dawn held a particular quality at Forward Operating Base Sentinel, a stillness that felt more like held breath than peace. Captain Vivian Ashford moved through the supply warehouse with practiced efficiency, her boots making soft sounds against the concrete floor as she checked ammunition crates for the third time that week. The metal cases were stacked precisely, organized by caliber and lot number, each one logged in her meticulous inventory system. It was 0430 hours, and she had been awake for 90 minutes already, though no one else on base knew that. She paused beside a crate of 7.62 NATO rounds, running her fingers along the seal to verify it remained intact. Her movements were economical, purposeful, the kind of efficiency that came from years of discipline rather than hurry. In the dim light from the overhead fixtures, her features were unremarkable in the way that allowed her to fade into the background of any room she entered. Average height, brown hair pulled back in a regulation bun. No makeup, no jewelry except for the plain watch on her left wrist. She looked exactly like what her orders said. She was a logistics and supply officer assigned to inventory management and coordination. The warehouse smelled of gun oil, cardboard, and the peculiar metallic tang of bulk ammunition. Vivian breathed it in like someone else might inhale coffee, finding comfort in the familiar sense of her profession. Her real profession, not the one listed on the duty roster hanging in the operations center. She moved to the window that overlooked the eastern perimeter, her eyes automatically tracking across the dark landscape beyond the base walls. Mountains rose in jagged silhouettes against the slowly lightening sky, their peaks still lost in shadow. Somewhere out there, in those mountains, 6 enemy snipers have been operating with impunity for 6 weeks. 14 coalition soldiers dead, 23 wounded, and every hunting operation sent to find them had come back empty-handed. Vivian had studied the after-action reports. She had reviewed the ballistics data, examined the photographs of impact sites, analyzed the angles and distances. She knew things about those 6 shooters that no one else on base had noticed yet, patterns that revealed themselves only to someone who understood the language of long-range precision fire. But she had said nothing, asked no questions, made no suggestions. That was not her role here, at least not officially. She was here to recover, to maintain a low profile, to let a political situation from her last assignment cool down while higher command decided what to do with an asset who had proven too effective for comfort. The sound of boots on gravel outside made her turn from the window. Major Garrett Holbrook appeared in the warehouse doorway, his frame backlit by the security lights outside. He was a tall man who carried himself with the rigid posture of someone who had learned early that bearing could substitute for presence. His uniform was immaculate despite the hour, every crease sharp enough to cut. "Captain Ashford," he said, his voice carrying the particular tone of someone who had decided to be irritated before arriving. "I saw the lights on. What exactly are you doing out here at this hour?" "Inventory check, sir," Vivian replied, her voice quiet and even. "We have a supply convoy arriving at 0900, and I wanted to verify our current stock levels before coordinating the offload." Holbrook moved into the warehouse, his eyes scanning the organized rows of crates and equipment. "At 0430, he said, "You realize this is a forward operating base, Captain, not a stateside logistics depot. We have combat operations ongoing. I have to question the value of having a paper pusher taking up space and resources when we need every available slot for actual operators." Vivian met his gaze without expression. "I go where I am assigned, sir. My orders place me here for inventory and supply coordination." "Your orders," Holbrook repeated, and something in his tone suggested he had his own opinions about those orders. "Yes, I have read your file, Captain. Logistics Officer, Georgetown Commissioning, no combat deployments listed. Quite a cushy career path." He gestured toward the walls of the warehouse. "Meanwhile, real soldiers are dying out there because we cannot seem to locate 6 enemy snipers who are making us look like fools." Before we continue, drop a comment and let us know what state you are watching from. Maybe you have got military bases near your community, or perhaps you have served yourself. Vivian said nothing, which seemed to irritate Holbrook further. He moved closer, lowering his voice. I'm going to be direct, Captain. I do not believe you should be at this FOB. I do not know what strings you pulled or what favors were called in to get you this assignment, but I want you to understand that I will be watching. If you step 1 inch outside your lane, if you interfere with my operations in any way, I will have you on the first transport back to whatever desk you came from. Are we clear? Crystal clear, sir, Vivian said. Holbrook held her gaze for another moment, then turned and walked out. Vivian waited until his footsteps faded before returning to her inventory work. Her expression had not changed throughout the encounter. No flicker of anger or resentment. Nothing that would give away the thoughts behind her careful neutrality. She had dealt with men like Holbrook before, officers who measured worth by volume rather than substance, who mistook their own assumptions for insight. She picked up her clipboard and continued down the row of ammunition crates, checking serial numbers against her lists. As she worked, her eyes continued to drift toward the eastern window, toward the mountains where the enemy waited. The sky was growing lighter now, dawn coming on with the inexorable certainty that marked desert mornings. In an hour, the base would fully wake, and she would fade once again into the background, the invisible logistics officer that no one noticed until they needed something requisitioned. On the wall near the warehouse exit, she had taped a printed photograph, one of dozens that lined the operations center, but that she had copied for herself. Sergeant Marcus Chun, killed 4 weeks ago by a sniper round at 1,200 meters while on convoy escort. She looked at his face for a moment, young and smiling in the photo, then turned back to her work. The crates needed counting, the supplies needed organizing, and somewhere in the darkness beyond the wire, 6 shooters were settling into another day of waiting. Vivian Ashford continued her inventory, counting bullets with the same careful attention that, in another context, might be used to count heartbeats. The operations center at 0730 hours hummed with the controlled chaos of morning briefing preparation. Vivian entered quietly, taking a position along the back wall where the overhead lights cast her into partial shadow. Maps covered every available surface, overlaid with acetate sheets marking engagement zones, patrol routes, and the red circles that designated confirmed enemy sniper positions. There were 6 red circles scattered across a 15-kilometer radius around the base, each one representing a location where coalition forces had taken fire. Colonel Meredith Strand entered with Captain Wen Zhang, the intelligence officer, following close behind with a tablet and a stack of folders. Strand was in her early 50s, gray threading through dark hair that she wore in a practical shortcut. Her presence commanded immediate attention, not through volume, but through the weight of competence earned over 30 years of service. She surveyed the assembled officers and senior NCOs, her gaze lingering briefly on Vivian before moving on. Good morning, Strand said. Let's get to it. Captain Zhang, your assessment. Zhang moved to the front, pulling up satellite imagery on the main screen. Ma'am, the situation has escalated. We now have confirmation of 6 distinct enemy sniper positions operating in coordinated patterns. She highlighted each red circle in sequence. Over the past 6 weeks, these shooters have engaged coalition forces 17 times. 14 killed, 23 wounded. Average engagement range is 1,100 meters, with the longest confirmed shot at 1,400 meters. A Marine lieutenant near the front shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, we have sent out 4 sniper hunting teams. They find nothing. It is like these shooters are ghosts. Zhang nodded. They are highly disciplined. Never fire from the same position twice. Never engage when our counter-sniper assets are in overwatch positions. They have spotters, communication equipment, and what appears to be real-time intelligence on our movements. She pulled up ballistics data. Based on recovered rounds, they're using modified Dragunov rifles and possibly some Western equipment acquired through black market channels. These are not amateur insurgents. This is a professional special operations cell. Strand leaned forward, studying the map. Time between engagements. Irregular, Zhang replied. Sometimes 3 days, sometimes a week. But the pattern suggests they are operating on a cycle. Intelligence indicates we may see another attack within the next 48 hours. The door opened and Lieutenant Commander Hayes Drummond entered with his senior chief, Rana Kapoor. Drummond was compact and muscular, with the weathered face of someone who had spent years in harsh environments. He moved with the easy confidence of a special operations officer, nodding to Strand before finding a spot near the situation map. "Commander Drummond," Strand said, "your team has been hunting these snipers for 2 weeks. Your assessment?" Drummond rubbed his jaw, frustration evident in the gesture. "Ma'am, with respect, we are chasing shadows. These shooters have discipline I have rarely seen. They do not take bait. They do not fall for deception operations. Every time we think we have predictive intelligence on their next position, they hit us from somewhere completely different." "What do you need?" Strand asked. Drummond hesitated. "Honestly, ma'am, I'm not sure. Better intelligence, maybe. Pattern analysis that goes deeper than what we have. These shooters are thinking 3 moves ahead of us." Vivian listened from her position against the back wall, her eyes moving between the maps and the tactical displays. She could see what they were missing, the subtle patterns in engagement timing that corresponded to sun angles and thermal wind shifts. The enemy snipers were not just avoiding coalition counter-operations. They were specifically choosing conditions that maximize their advantages while minimizing detection risks. It was textbook counter-sniper doctrine, the kind taught in specialized schools that most line officers never attended. Major Holbrook spoke up from his position near Strand. "Colonel, I have to question whether we are allocating resources effectively. We have critical supply operations being managed by officers who could be better utilized elsewhere." He did not look at Vivian, but the implication was clear. "Captain Ashford is assigned to logistics coordination," Strand said, her tone allowing no discussion. "Her presence here is not subject to debate, Major." "Of course, ma'am," Holbrook replied. "I simply meant that in a combat environment, every asset should be optimized for mission effectiveness." The briefing continued for another 20 minutes, reviewing patrol schedules, security protocols, and contingency plans. When Strand finally dismissed the group, officers and NCOs filed out in clusters, discussing the sniper problem in low voices. Vivian waited until most had left before approaching Captain Zhang near the situation map. "Captain Zhang," Vivian said quietly, "the ballistics data you mentioned, do you have the complete analysis available?" Zhang looked up surprised. "Captain Ashford, right? Logistics." She smiled politely. "I have the reports, yes. Why do you ask?" "I grew up around firearms," Vivian said. "Competitive shooting background. I'm just curious about the technical details." Zhang studied her for a moment, then pulled up files on her tablet. "Here, recovered rounds show consistent rifling patterns, suggesting the same weapons are being used repeatedly. Wind drift calculations indicate they are making corrections for atmospheric conditions. These are not lucky shots. These are trained marksmen." Vivian scanned the data, her eyes picking out details that confirmed her initial assessment. The enemy snipers were using a specific methodology, one that prioritized survivability over volume of fire. They were patient, professional, and most importantly, they were following a doctrine she recognized. "What about engagement timing?" Vivian asked. "Has anyone correlated the attacks with meteorological data?" Zhang blinked. "Meteorological data? That is an interesting question. No, we have not made that correlation. Why would weather patterns matter?" Vivian caught herself, remembering Holbrook's warning about staying in her lane. Just thinking out loud, she said, "Thank you for showing me the data, Captain." She left the operations center before Zhang could ask more questions. Outside, the morning sun was already heating the air, promising another day of desert temperatures that would top 40 degrees. Vivian walked back toward the supply warehouse, but her mind was working through calculations, building 3-dimensional models of terrain and wind patterns, imagining herself in the enemy sniper's positions. She had been at FOB Sentinel for 3 weeks, watching, learning, staying invisible. Colonel Strand knew why she was really here, knew what her actual specialty was, but higher command had ordered her to maintain cover while they decided what to do with an operator whose last mission had eliminated the wrong target and created an international incident. So she counted ammunition crates, and filed supply requisitions and pretended to be exactly what her orders said she was. But every day, more soldiers died. Every briefing added new red circles to the map. And Vivian Ashford, who held classified records for counter-sniper operations that would never appear in her official file, watched and waited and hoped that someone would ask the right questions before the body count climbed higher. 3 days passed without incident, but the quiet felt wrong to anyone who had spent time in combat zones. It was the kind of silence that preceded violence, a held breath before the storm. Vivian maintained her routines, arriving before dawn to check inventory, coordinating with convoy schedules, filing reports that no one read. But her real work happened in the margins, in the careful observation of terrain and patterns that she logged only in memory. On the 4th morning, she found Corporal Tiago Reyes on the eastern perimeter, struggling with his rifle. The young Marine was maybe 22, with the lean build of someone who had grown up hungry and joined the military for stability. His M4 was field stripped on a canvas tarp, parts laid out in careful order, but frustration showed in the tight set of his shoulders. "Problem, Corporal?" Vivian asked, approaching quietly enough that he startled. "Ma'am," he said, straightening. "Just cleaning my weapon. But I've been getting failures to feed on the range. Cannot figure out what is causing it." Vivian crouched beside the disassembled rifle, her eyes scanning the components with practiced efficiency. "May I?" she asked. Reyes nodded, watching as she picked up the bolt carrier group and examined it in the morning light. She turned it slowly, checking the gas rings, the cam pin, the extractor spring. Her fingers moved with the kind of familiarity that came from thousands of repetitions, muscle memory so deep it was unconscious. "Your extractor spring is worn," she said. "See here, the tension is inconsistent. That is causing your rounds to hang up during the feeding cycle." She set down the bolt carrier and picked up the magazine. In this magazine, the feed lips are slightly bent, probably for being dropped on the corners too many times. Between the weak extractor and the damaged magazine, you are asking for malfunctions. Reyes stared at her. "Ma'am, how did you, that is pretty specific diagnosis." Vivian handed back the components. "I grew up on a ranch in Montana. My father was a competitive long-range shooter. I learned to field strip a rifle before I learned to drive." She stood, brushing dust from her uniform. "Get a new extractor spring from the armory. Reference the technical manual, part number 5307654, and retire that magazine. Do not try to bend the feed lips back. It will never seat rounds reliably again." "Yes, ma'am," Reyes said, his expression transformed from frustration to something approaching awe. "Thank you, ma'am. I've been fighting with this thing for 2 weeks." Vivian nodded and continued her walk along the perimeter. Behind her, she heard Reyes gathering his rifle components with renewed purpose. It was a small interaction, meaningless in the scope of the base's larger mission, but she knew how small details accumulated. A Marine whose rifle worked reliably was a Marine who might survive the next engagement. She reached the northwest observation post, where the terrain opened up to show the full sweep of the valley and the mountains beyond. This position offered clear lines of sight to multiple approaches, which made it tactically valuable but also exposed. A sniper with the right equipment could cover this position from at least 4 different concealment points that Vivian had already identified. She pulled a small notebook from her pocket and made a quick sketch, adding it to the mental map she had been building since her arrival. "Captain Ashford," a voice called from below. Master Sergeant Cole Brennan was climbing the tower stairs, his boots heavy on the metal steps. He was thick through the chest and shoulders, with the weathered face of a career NCO who had spent most of his adult life in hard places. His expression showed the particular skepticism that some senior enlisted reserved for officers they consider questionable. "Sergeant," Vivian acknowledged. Brennan reached the top of the tower, breathing heavily. "I saw you talking to Corporal Reyes about his weapon. He was having reliability issues," Vivian said. "I gave him some troubleshooting advice." "Troubleshooting advice," Brennan repeated. He leaned against the railing, his eyes fixed on her face. "Ma'am, with respect, what does a supply officer know about combat weapon systems?" "Reyes is a rifleman." He has armorers he can consult. He does not need a clerk giving him amateur gunsmithing tips. Vivian kept her expression neutral. I identified a worn extractor spring and a damaged magazine. That is basic maintenance, Sergeant, not amateur gunsmithing. Basic maintenance, Brennan said. Ma'am, I have been in the Corps for 19 years. I have trained Marines on weapons systems across 4 deployments. And now I have got junior enlisted coming to me asking why the supply officer knows more about their rifles than their team leaders. It undermines the chain of expertise. I apologize if I overstepped, Vivian said quietly. That was not my intention. Your intentions do not matter much, Brennan replied. What matters is that we have real soldiers dying out there, because we cannot locate 6 enemy snipers who are making us look like incompetent children. Meanwhile, you are playing mechanic with rifles and taking up space that could go to another operator. He straightened, preparing to descend the stairs. Stay in your lane, Captain. That is advice from someone who has actually been in combat. He left without waiting for a response. Vivian watched him go, then turned back to survey the valley. She understood his frustration, even sympathized with it. The base was hemorrhaging casualties to an enemy they could not see, could not predict, could not counter. Everyone was on edge, looking for someone to blame, desperate for solutions that seemed impossibly out of reach. What Brennan could not know, what she could not tell him, was that she had spent 7 years developing counter-sniper doctrine for Special Operations Forces, that she had trained teams across 3 continents, that her classified record included 89 confirmed eliminations of enemy snipers, often under conditions that would have broken lesser operators, that the real reason she was at this base, hidden behind a logistics cover, was because her last mission had been too successful and too politically complicated, resulting in her being temporarily shelved while higher command decided whether she was an asset or a liability. But none of that mattered if she could not convince anyone to listen. Colonel Strand knew her real background, but Strand was bound by classification protocols and orders from above. Until those orders changed, Vivian was just a supply officer who knew too much about rifles and not enough about staying invisible. She descended from the observation tower and walked back toward the warehouse. The sun was climbing higher, heat beginning to shimmer off the concrete and packed earth. In the distance, a convoy was forming up for a supply run to an outlying checkpoint. Vivian watched the vehicles line up, noting the spacing, the vehicle types, the timing. Somewhere in the mountains, she knew, the enemy snipers were watching too. The morning after the failed patrol brought attention to the operations center that Vivian could feel from across the base. She had heard the radio traffic overnight, the sharp voices reporting contact, the controlled urgency as casualties were called in. 2 SEALs wounded, not critically, but the frustration in Lieutenant Commander Drummond's voice had been unmistakable. The enemy sniper had engaged from an elevated position, fired 3 rounds, and vanished before the team could even identify the source. Vivian entered the operations center during the debrief, taking her usual position along the back wall. Drummond stood at the map table with his team, exhaustion evident in the lines around his eyes. Chief Petty Officer Kapoor was there too, her arm freshly bandaged, one of the 2 wounded from the engagement. We had solid intelligence on the position, Drummond was saying to Colonel Strand. The factory complex, 2nd floor, southeast corner. Perfect overwatch of the supply route. We approached from the north, using the terrain for concealment, standard counter-sniper tactics. He pointed to the map. But when we got there, nothing. No shell casings, no disturbance in the dust. No indication anyone had been there in days. But you took fire, Strand said. From the minaret, Drummond replied, pointing to a position 800 meters east of the factory. Completely different location. It was like they knew we were coming and repositioned specifically to ambush us. Captain Zhang spoke up from her position near the intelligence displays. Commander, we used the same predictive analysis that has worked in other theaters. Engagement timing, sun angles, defensive sightlines. The factory position fit every parameter. Vivian shifted slightly, drawing Drummond's attention. The movement was unconscious, an involuntary reaction to hearing tactical analysis that missed a critical variable. Drummond noticed, his eyes narrowing as he studied her. "Captain Ashford," he said, "you have something to add." The room went quiet. Major Holbrook turned from his position near the window, his expression already hardening. Vivian met Drummond's gaze, weighing her response. "It is outside my area of expertise, Commander," she said carefully. "Humor me," Drummond replied. "What were you reacting to?" Vivian glanced at Strand, who gave the slightest nod. She moved to the map table, her finger tracing the route from the factory to the minaret. "The factory position has excellent sight lines," she said quietly, "but it faces directly east. At the time of your patrol, 0630 hours, the sun would have been at a 15-degree angle above the horizon, creating direct glare into any scope pointed west toward the supply route. An experienced sniper would never choose that position at that time of day." The room was silent. Zhang leaned closer to the map, her eyes widening slightly as she followed the logic. "The minaret," Vivian continued, "faces southwest. At 0630, the sun would be behind the shooter, providing optimal lighting conditions without glare. Additionally, the prevailing wind at that hour runs northwest to southeast. The minaret position allows for wind drift compensation without the crosswind variables you would face from the factory." She stepped back. A trained sniper chooses position based on sun, wind, and escape routes. Time of day changes everything. Drummond stared at her. Where did a logistics officer learn counter-sniper doctrine? Before Vivian could respond, Major Holbrook stepped forward. "Commander Drummond, I would caution against taking tactical advice from officers without combat experience. Captain Ashford's service record shows no specialized training in this area." "With respect, Major," Drummond said, not looking away from Vivian, "that was not amateur analysis. That was professional-level tactical assessment." He turned to Strand. "Colonel, what is Captain Ashford's actual background?" Strand's expression remained carefully neutral. "Captain Ashford's complete service record is classified above your clearance level, Commander. What I can tell you is that she is assigned to this base under my authority, and her expertise, whatever its nature, is available if you choose to consult her." Holbrook's face darkened. "Colonel, I must object to this irregular approach to operational planning. We have established procedures, trained specialists, proper channels for tactical coordination." "Your objection is noted, Major," Strand said. "Commander Drummond, you are preparing another patrol tonight." "Yes, ma'am," Drummond replied. "We have intelligence suggesting the enemy will attempt to engage the resupply convoy scheduled for 1800 hours. Captain Ashford," Strand said, turning to Vivian, "your assessment of likely sniper positions, given the convoy timing and route." Vivian felt the weight of every eye in the room. Holbrook's hostility was palpable, but Drummond was leaning forward, genuinely interested. She moved to the map, studying the convoy route and the surrounding terrain. "The convoy departs at 1800, she said. Sunset is at 1847. The enemy has consistently chosen positions that allow engagement during transitional lighting, when targets are visible but shooters are harder to spot." She traced a line along the route. "This section here, where the road curves through the wadi, offers 3 elevated positions with clear sight lines. But given the timing, I would expect them to position on the western ridge. As the sun sets behind them, they will have maximum concealment while the convoy is silhouetted against the eastern sky." Drummond marked the positions she indicated. "Approach vectors. From the north," she said immediately. "The western ridge has limited access from the south and east. They would position vehicles here in this depression with a spotter maintaining overwatch on the approach. Primary shooter would be here, secondary shooter offset by 200 meters for overlapping fields of fire." She looked up at Drummond. "But they're disciplined. If they detect your approach, they will abort the operation rather than risk engagement." "How do we prevent them from detecting us?" Drummond asked. "You do not," Vivian said. "You make them think they have detected a different threat. Position a visible patrol unit approaching from the south, drawing their attention and forcing them to adjust their focus. Your actual counter-sniper team approaches from the north during that window." Drummond studied the map, then looked at Strand. "Ma'am, request permission to incorporate Captain Ashford's recommendations into tonight's operation plan. This is highly irregular," Holbrook interjected. "We cannot base combat operations on speculation from an officer with no documented tactical training." "Commander Drummond is leading the operation," Strand said. "He has authority to utilize whatever intelligence and analysis he deems valuable." She turned to Vivian. "Captain, you will remain available for consultation." "Yes, ma'am," Vivian said. The briefing continued, but the dynamic had shifted. Drummond asked Vivian 3 more questions about terrain and positioning, each time receiving answers that demonstrated a depth of knowledge that belied her official role. By the time the room cleared, Master Sergeant Brennan was staring at her with open confusion, and Major Holbrook had left without another word, his silence more threatening than his objections had been. Vivian returned to the warehouse, knowing she had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Tonight's patrol would either validate her analysis or confirm Holbrook's assessment that she was dangerously out of her depth. Either way, her cover as an invisible logistics officer was gone. The convoy departed at exactly 1800 hours, 6 vehicles rolling through the main gate in tactical spacing as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon. Vivian watched from the operations center, standing beside Captain Zhang at the communication station. The radio traffic was routine, convoy leader calling out checkpoints, security teams reporting clear sectors. But beneath the routine transmissions lay a current of tension that everyone in the room could feel. Lieutenant Commander Drummond's SEAL team had departed 90 minutes earlier, moving on foot through terrain that would position them north of the Western Ridge. A Marine rifle platoon had been staged as the visible patrol, approaching from the south in 3 Humvees with lights and noise, drawing attention exactly as Vivian had suggested. The pieces were in position, the traps set, and now they waited to see if the enemy would take the bait. Colonel Strand stood at the main tactical display, her arms crossed, expression unreadable. Major Holbrook occupied a position near the door, his posture rigid, occasionally glancing at Vivian with barely concealed hostility. Master Sergeant Brennan monitored the logistics net, coordinating support assets, but his attention kept drifting to the tactical frequencies. "Convoy is approaching the Wadi," Captain Zhang said, her voice steady despite the tension. "Estimated 3 minutes to the danger zone. All units report status," Strand ordered. The responses came in sequence. SEAL team in position, no enemy contact. Marine patrol visible on southern approach, attracting attention as intended. Convoy maintaining speed and spacing. Everything was proceeding according to plan, which in Vivian's experience meant they were moments away from chaos or success, and no one would know which until it happened. Movement on the ridge. Drummond's voice crackled through the radio, controlled and professional. 2 individuals, elevated position, one with long rifle. Confirming Captain Ashford's position prediction. "They're watching the Marine Patrol, have not detected our position." Holbrook's head snapped toward Vivian, his expression caught between vindication and disbelief. Zhang leaned forward, her fingers flying across the keyboard to update the tactical display with confirmed enemy positions. "Second position identified," Drummond continued. 200 meters east of primary, exactly as briefed. They have a spotter and a shooter. These people are professionals. "Convoy entering the Wadi now," Zhang reported. 30 seconds to optimal engagement range. Vivian's hands were clasped behind her back, her breathing steady, but her mind was racing through calculations. The enemy snipers had taken the positions she predicted, which meant they were following doctrine she understood. But doctrine also meant they would have contingency plans, escape routes, signals for aborting the operation. Drummond's team had perhaps 60 seconds before the enemy detected them or the tactical situation changed. "SEAL team moving to engage," Drummond reported. "Maintain convoy speed, do not deviate." The next 40 seconds stretched like hours. Radio silence from the SEAL team as they closed on the enemy positions. Convoy rolling through the Wadi, vulnerable but unaware of the drama playing out on the ridge above. Marine Patrol continuing their noisy approach from the south, the perfect distraction. Then gunfire erupted through the radio speakers, sharp cracks of rifles firing in controlled bursts. Voices overlapped, SEALs calling out positions and movements with the practiced efficiency of operators who had worked together for years. Contact, contact, Drummond's voice came through. Primary sniper engaging, secondary position attempting to reposition. Chief, take the high side. More gunfire, then a longer burst from a heavier weapon. The sounds echoed through the operations center speakers with crystalline clarity, every person in the room frozen in place, listening to combat happening in real time miles away. Primary down, Chief Kapoor's voice reported. Secondary sniper is running, heading northeast toward the vehicle position. Pursue, Drummond ordered. Do not let them extract. The firefight continued, moving now, the sounds of running feet and shouted commands mixing with intermittent gunfire. Vivian knew the terrain they were crossing, had studied it through binoculars and satellite imagery for days. The enemy would try to reach their vehicle, but the route was exposed, rocky terrain that favored pursuers over runners. Secondary sniper down, Drummond reported, breathing hard. Spotter is surrendering. We have 2 enemy Kia, 1 prisoner. No friendly casualties. He paused, then added, Captain Ashford's analysis was completely accurate. Position, timing, approach vectors, all confirmed. The operations center erupted in controlled celebration, officers and NCOs exchanging looks of relief and satisfaction. Colonel Strand allowed herself a slight smile, nodding once. Captain Zhang was already updating situation reports, documenting the successful operation. Major Holbrook said nothing. He stared at Vivian for a long moment, his jaw working as if chewing on words he would not speak. Then he turned and left the operations center, the door closing behind him with deliberate care. Outstanding work, Commander, Strand said into the radio. Secure the prisoners and any intelligence materials. We will have transportation to your position within 30 minutes. The convoy continued through the wadi unmolested, the threat neutralized before it could materialize. Marine Patrol reverse course, their role as distraction complete. SEAL team began processing the site, collecting weapons and documents that might provide intelligence on the remaining enemy snipers. Vivian remained to her position near the communication station, not celebrating, not drawing attention to herself. 2 enemy snipers eliminated meant for still operational, for highly trained shooters who would now know that coalition forces had developed effective countertactics. The next engagement would be harder, the enemy more cautious, and the window for preventing additional casualties was narrowing. Captain Ashford, Strand said quietly, approaching her position. A word, please. They stepped into a small briefing room off the main operations center. Strand closed the door and turned to face her, expression serious. That was exceptional analysis, Strand said. But you understand what you have done. You have revealed capabilities that your cover was meant to conceal. Yes, ma'am, Vivian replied. But 2 more soldiers are alive tonight because of it. I do not disagree with your priorities, Strand said. But Major Holbrook is going to be a problem. He feels undermined, and he has political connections that could complicate your situation here. My situation is already complicated, ma'am, Vivian said. And with respect, 14 soldiers are dead because I have been counting ammunition crates instead of doing what I was trained to do. Strand studied her for a long moment. Your orders remain unchanged. You are here on administrative assignment, not operational deployment. But, she paused, if Commander Drummond requests your consultation on future operations, I will not prevent it. Call it making best use of available resources. Understood, ma'am, Vivian said. She returned to the warehouse as darkness settled fully over the base. Word of the successful operation had already spread, and as she walked past small groups of soldiers, she noticed their eyes following her, conversations pausing as she approached. Her anonymity was gone, replaced by curiosity and speculation. By morning, everyone on base would be asking the same questions Drummond had asked. Who was the supply officer who predicted enemy positions with professional precision, and what was she really doing at FOB Sentinel? The morning after the successful operation brought an eerie silence to the region. No sniper attacks, no enemy contact, not even the usual harassing fire that occasionally targeted the base perimeter. Captain Zhang's intelligence assessment suggested the enemy was regrouping, analyzing their losses, recalibrating their tactics. 4 snipers remained operational, and they had just learned that coalition forces had developed effective countermeasures. Vivian arrived at the warehouse before dawn as always, but now found Corporal Reyes waiting outside with 2 other young Marines. They straightened when they saw her, a mixture of respect and curiosity evident in their faces. "Ma'am," Reyes said, "we heard about yesterday. What you did for Commander Drummond's team." He hesitated, then continued. "We were wondering if you might have time to help us with some marksmanship fundamentals. Our scores have been slipping and, well, you seem to know your way around rifles." Vivian studied the 3 Marines. They were all young, probably on their first deployment, eager to improve, but lacking the experience to know what they did not know. She thought of Holbrook's warning about staying in her lane, about Master Sergeant Brennan's accusation that she was undermining proper training channels. "What does your team leader say about your scores?" she asked. Reyes glanced at his companions. "He says we need more range time, ma'am. But range time does not help if we are repeating the same mistakes." She considered for a moment, then nodded. 0530 tomorrow morning, Northeast Range. Bring your rifles and 2 magazines each. We will go through the basics. But this does not replace your regular training, understood? This is supplemental." "Yes, ma'am," all 3 replied in unison. They dispersed quickly, and Vivian entered the warehouse to begin her inventory work. She had been checking supplies for perhaps 20 minutes when Master Sergeant Brennan appeared in the doorway, his expression thunderous. "Captain Ashford," he said, his voice carrying across the open space. "We need to talk. Now." Vivian set down her clipboard and walked to meet him. "Sergeant, I just heard you're organizing weapons training for junior Marines," Brennan said. "Without coordination through proper channels, without notification to their chain of command, without any authorization that I can find anywhere. They asked for help with marksmanship fundamentals," Vivian replied calmly. "I agreed to provide some coaching on my own time." "Your own time," Brennan repeated. "Ma'am, I do not care what kind of tactical voodoo you pulled off yesterday. You do not have authority to train Marines. That is my job. That is what I have spent 19 years learning to do. You are a logistics officer, and yesterday's lucky guess does not change that." "It was not a lucky guess," Vivian said quietly. "Then what was it?" Brennan demanded. "Because your service record shows no sniper training, no tactical operations background, no combat experience whatsoever. So either you're lying about your qualifications, or someone is lying in your file. Which is it?" "My complete service record is classified," Sergeant Vivian said. "What I can tell you is that I have relevant experience that allows me to help these young Marines improve their fundamental skills. That is all." Brennan stepped closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "I'm going to be very clear, Captain. You are confusing these kids. You are making them question their training, their leaders, their chain of command. Yesterday, you got lucky with Commander Drummond, but that does not give you carte blanche to play instructor with my Marines. Stand down, or I will take this to Major Holbrook, and we will see how your mysterious classified background stands up to official scrutiny." He turned and left before she could respond. Vivian watched him go, understanding his perspective even as she recognized the impossible position she occupied. She was trying to help, but in doing so she was threatening established hierarchies and exposing capabilities she was ordered to keep hidden. She returned to her inventory work, but her mind was elsewhere. The enemy snipers had gone quiet, which meant they were planning something. Experience taught her that professional shooters did not simply disappear after losing team members. They adapted, evolved, came back stronger and more careful. At 1,100 hours, she received a summons to Major Holbrook's office. She knew what was coming before she arrived, had prepared herself for the confrontation during the walk across the base. Holbrook was seated behind his desk, a thin folder open in front of him, his expression carved from stone. "Captain Ashford, sit down," he said without preamble. She took the indicated chair, maintaining proper posture, her face neutral. "I have received a complaint from Master Sergeant Brennan," Holbrook said, "regarding your unauthorized training activities with junior enlisted personnel. Do you have a response?" "I agreed to provide marksmanship coaching at the request of several Marines who were struggling with their qualification scores," Vivian replied. "The training was to be conducted on my personal time and was intended to supplement, not replace, their regular instruction." "That is not your role," Holbrook said flatly. "You're a logistics officer. You coordinate supplies and equipment. You do not train combat personnel. You do not provide tactical advice to special operations teams. And you most certainly do not position yourself as some kind of weapons expert based on a single successful prediction." "With respect, Major, it was not a single prediction," Vivian said. "It was comprehensive tactical analysis that saved lives." Holbrook's face darkened. "Do not lecture me about tactical analysis, Captain. I have commanded combat operations in 3 different theaters. I know what real expertise looks like, and I know what happens when officers exceed their authority based on inflated self-assessment." He closed the folder with a sharp snap. "I am issuing you a direct order. You will cease all training activities with enlisted personnel. You will not provide tactical advice or operational input unless specifically requested by Colonel Strand. You will confine your activities to supply and logistics coordination, which is your assigned role. Any deviation from these instructions will result in formal disciplinary action and immediate removal from this base. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear, sir," Vivian said. "Good. Dismissed." She left his office and walked back toward the warehouse, feeling the weight of restrictions closing around her. Holbrook was within his rights to limit her activities, and his concerns about chain of command were valid. But somewhere in the mountains beyond the wire, for enemy snipers were preparing their next operation, and she was the only person on base with the specific training and experience to counter them effectively. That evening, she found Lieutenant Commander Drummond near the mess hall. He was eating alone, studying maps on a tablet, the focused intensity of an operator who never fully disconnected from mission planning. "Commander," she said quietly, "may I speak with you?" He looked up, then gestured to the empty seat across from him. "Captain Ashford, seat. I was actually hoping to catch you. We are planning follow-up operations against the remaining enemy snipers, and I wanted your input on likely repositioning. I need to inform you that Major Holbrook has restricted my activities," Vivian said. "I am not authorized to provide tactical advice except through Colonel Strand's direct request." Drummond's expression hardened. "He pulled rank on you." "He is within his authority," Vivian replied. "But Commander, you need to understand something. The enemy snipers are not going to repeat their previous patterns. They're going to change tactics, alter their methodology, and they will be actively hunting for your counter-sniper teams. The next engagement will be exponentially more dangerous." "Then I need your expertise more than ever," Drummond said. "Let me talk to the colonel. We will find a way to work around Holbrook's restrictions. You should also know," Vivian continued, "that the silence we are experiencing is not random. Professional snipers do not go quiet out of fear. They go quiet to prepare. My assessment is that we have less than 72 hours before they attempt a major coordinated strike." The attack came at 0342 hours, precisely when Vivian had predicted it would. She was on the eastern perimeter, officially conducting a supply cache inspection, but actually maintaining an unauthorized overwatch position. The first shot cracked through the pre-dawn darkness like a whip snap, and she saw the muzzle flash from an elevated position 1,800 meters distant. The sentry on the eastern wall dropped instantly, killed before he could even register the threat. 3 more shots followed in rapid succession, each from a different direction. 3 more soldiers hit, the coordinated fire coming from positions that created overlapping kill zones, covering the entire eastern approach and main base area. This was not harassing fire or opportunistic targeting. This was a professional military operation designed to inflict maximum casualties. Vivian keyed her radio to the tactical operations frequency. Operations, this is Captain Ashford. Multiple sniper positions confirmed. For shooters, elevated positions creating interlocking fields of fire. I have visual on 2 muzzle flashes, estimating position for the others based on shot timing and impact angles. Her transmission was lost in the chaos of overlapping radio traffic. Alarms shrieked across the base, soldiers scrambling to defensive positions, officers shouting orders that contradicted each other in the confusion. 2 more shots rang out, 2 more soldiers down. The enemy snipers were firing with disciplined precision, choosing targets that maximize disruption while minimizing their own exposure. Major Holbrook's voice cut through the radio chaos. All units, return suppressive fire on suspected enemy positions. Saturate the eastern ridge with heavy weapons. Vivian knew immediately that Holbrook's order was exactly wrong. Suppressive fire against unseen sniper positions would only reveal more coalition soldier locations while accomplishing nothing against professional shooters in hardened positions. She keyed her radio again, trying to reach Colonel Strand directly. Colonel Strand, this is Ashford. Advise against suppressive fire. Enemy snipers are positioned to exploit muzzle flash targeting. Request permission to access specialized equipment and engage. The response was drowned out by the sound of .50 caliber machine guns opening up, tracers arcing into the darkness toward empty hillsides while the enemy snipers adjusted their aim and continued their methodical destruction. Vivian counted the shots, tracked the timing, built a 3-dimensional mental map of where each shooter had to be positioned to achieve their observed fire patterns. Lieutenant Commander Drummond's SEAL team was attempting to organize a response from their ready position, but enemy fire pinned them down before they could deploy. Chief Kapoor's voice came through the radio reporting 2 team members wounded, unable to advance or effectively return fire. Vivian made a decision. She ran toward the armory, her boots pounding against concrete as bullets cracked overhead and impacted around the base. 9 casualties now. She counted maybe 10. Every second of delay meant more wounded, more dead, more families receiving notifications they would never recover from. The armory door was locked, but she had the emergency access code that Colonel Strand had given her days earlier. She punched it in, the heavy door swinging open to reveal rows of weapons and equipment. She moved directly to the specialized storage area, to a specific case that had arrived with her personal effects, but had remained unopened until now. Captain Ashford, what the hell do you think you are doing? Master Sergeant Brennan appeared in the doorway, his face a mask of confusion and anger. He had followed her from the perimeter, drawn by her sprint across an active combat zone. My job, Sergeant, she said without breaking stride. She opened the case to reveal a custom long-range precision rifle, built to specifications that existed in no military manual. The weapon was a thing of lethal beauty, every component selected and tuned for a single purpose, eliminating enemy snipers at extreme distance. Brennan stared at the rifle, then at her. Where did you get that? What is this? Vivian assembled the rifle with movements so practiced they looked choreographed. She loaded specialized ammunition, checked the scope calibrations, verified the action. The entire process took less than 40 seconds. Stand aside, Sergeant, she said quietly. People are dying. She left the armory at a run, heading for the Western Observation Tower. It was the highest elevated position on the base with clear lines of sight to the enemy sniper positions she had identified. Brennan followed, no longer trying to stop her, but clearly uncertain whether to help or report her. Corporal Reyes was in the tower, crouched behind sandbags, firing blind into the darkness with his M4. His face showed the particular terror of a young soldier under fire for the first time, trying to do something, anything, even if it was tactically useless. Corporal, cease fire and move aside, Vivian ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos with absolute authority. Reyes recognized her, confusion flashing across his face, but he obeyed immediately. He pressed himself against the tower wall as Vivian settled into a firing position, the rifle's bipod steady on the sandbags. Her breathing slowed, her heart rate dropping as she entered the mental state she had occupied hundreds of times before. The chaos around her faded to background noise, her entire focus narrowing to the scope picture and the calculations running through her mind. Enemy rounds continued impacting coalition positions. She heard screams, shouts, the desperate radio calls for medical support. 7 more casualties in the last 90 seconds. The kill count was climbing, and if she did not stop these shooters in the next few minutes, the base would be facing catastrophic losses. Her radio crackled with Colonel Strand's voice, finally breaking through the tactical frequency chaos. All units, this is actual. Captain Ashford is authorized to engage enemy snipers. Provide support as directed and stand by for her targeting calls. Major Holbrook's response came immediately, his voice tight with fury. Colonel, I must protest this irregular authorization. Captain Ashford is not qualified for combat operations. Major, Strand's voice was ice cold. Shut up and let her work. Vivian's scope settled on the first position, a clock tower structure 1,847 meters distant, where she had seen the initial muzzle flash. The enemy sniper was still there, confident in his concealment, unaware that he was being hunted by someone who had spent 7 years perfecting the art of counter-sniper operations. Command, this is Ashford, she said into the radio, her voice steady and professional. Target 1, designated clock tower, range 1,847 meters. Wind 3 knots east-northeast. Thermal gradient minimal. Engaging now. Her finger pressed the trigger with smooth, control pressure. The rifle fired, the recoil absorbed by her body position and the weapon's design. For 2.6 seconds, the bullet traveled through darkness, covering nearly 2 kilometers while dropping precisely according to the ballistic calculations she had made in fractions of a second. The enemy sniper in the clock tower never heard the shot that killed him. He simply ceased to exist as a threat, his coordinated fire pattern broken. Radio silence for a heartbeat. Then Lieutenant Commander Drummond's voice, filled with something between awe and disbelief. Confirm enemy sniper neutralized. Single shot, extreme distance. How is that even possible? But Vivian was already adjusting her position, settling her scope on the second target. Target 2, designated Minaret. Range 1,653 meters. Engaging. The second shot followed the first with mechanical precision. Another enemy sniper eliminated, another piece removed from the coordinated attack. The remaining shooters would be recalculating now, searching for the counter-sniper who was systematically destroying their team. Corporal Reyes pressed himself against the tower wall, staring at Vivian like he had never seen her before. Master Sergeant Brennan stood at the tower entrance, his previous hostility replaced by stunned comprehension. The quiet logistics officer who organized supply crates and file paperwork was methodically eliminating professional enemy snipers at distances that most soldiers could not even conceptualize. Vivian chambered a third round, her mind already calculating the next shot. 4 enemy snipers had begun this attack. 2 were down, 2 remained, and they were about to learn that they had made a fatal tactical error when they chose to engage forward operating base sentinel. The remaining 2 enemy snipers realized they were being hunted. Their fire pattern changed immediately, shifting from methodical target selection to rapid engagement designed to suppress and locate the counter-sniper, eliminating their team. Rounds began impacting near Vivian's position, the distinctive crack of supersonic bullets passing close enough that she could feel the pressure waves. Target 3, designated Rooftop East, she called into the radio, her voice calm despite bullets striking the sandbags around her. Range 1,420 meters. Engaging. She fired, the rifle's report sharp in the confined tower space. Through her scope, she watched the enemy sniper on the eastern rooftop position collapse, his rifle clattering against the concrete parapet. 3 down, 2 to go. But these final 2 were the best of the enemy team, the most experienced, and they had just watched 3 teammates eliminated in less than 4 minutes by an unseen shooter. Corporal Reyes pressed himself tighter against the tower wall as incoming fire intensified. A round punched through the sandbag 6 inches from Vivian's left shoulder, spraying sand and fabric fragments. She did not flinch, did not shift position, her entire focus locked on finding the fourth target through her scope. "Ma'am," Reyes said, his voice tight with fear, "they know where we are. We need to move." "Stay low, Corporal," Vivian replied. Movement now would be fatal. In the operations center, every eye was fixed on the tactical displays, showing Vivian's position under increasingly accurate fire. Major Holbrook stood frozen near the communication station, his face drained of color as he listened to the engagement unfold. Captain Zhang was coordinating medical evacuations for the 14 wounded soldiers scattered across the base, while Colonel Strand maintained direct radio contact with Vivian. "Captain Ashford," Strand's voice came through the radio, "report your status." "Taking accurate fire from remaining positions," Vivian replied. "They're trying to suppress while they relocate. Target 4, designated factory. Range 2,104 meters. Difficult angle, thermal gradient affecting trajectory. Adjusting for crosswind." The factory position was the most challenging shot yet. The enemy sniper had positioned himself inside a partially collapsed industrial building, using the broken walls for concealment while maintaining a narrow firing lane toward the base. The bullet would need to travel through multiple thermal layers as it passed from the cool pre-dawn air into the warmer zone near the ground, then back up to the elevated target position. Wind was gusting irregularly, creating drift variables that changed every few seconds. Vivian calculated the shot in segments, breaking the 104-meter distance into zones where different environmental factors dominated. Her breathing slowed further, her heart rate dropping into the zone where each beat was separated by nearly 2 seconds. In the space between heartbeats, she found a moment of perfect stillness. The rifle fired. The bullet traced an arc through the darkness, rising, falling, drifting minutely left to compensate for wind, then impacting precisely where she had calculated. The enemy sniper at the factory position was eliminated before he could adjust to his new firing lane. For down, 1 remaining. Lieutenant Commander Drummond's SEAL team used the break in enemy fire to advance, pushing toward the remaining sniper position from ground level. But the final enemy shooter was not cooperating with their tactical approach. He had gone completely silent, ceased all fire, effectively disappeared into the terrain he had been using so effectively moments before. "Last target has gone dark," Drummond reported over the radio. "No muzzle flash, no movement. He knows he is the last one, and he is playing it smart." Vivian scanned the terrain through her scope, searching for any indication of position. The final sniper position had been designated Mountain Shadow, an elevated rocky outcrop 2,340 meters distant that offered exceptional concealment and multiple escape routes. It was the position she would have chosen herself if she were planning this operation, which meant the shooter there was likely the team leader, the most experienced and dangerous of the group. The base had gone eerily quiet, the initial chaos settling into tense anticipation. Wounded were being treated, security teams held positions, and everyone waited to see if the final enemy sniper would re-engage or attempt to extract. Then 3 coalition soldiers were hit in rapid succession, all from different areas of the base. Vivian's mind processed the shot geometry instantly. The final enemy sniper had not stayed at the Mountain Shadow position. He had relocated to the Overwatch, a position 1,890 meters distant that offered clear sight lines to multiple base sectors. It was a bold move, repositioning during active engagement, and it confirmed that this shooter was operating at the highest professional level. "Target repositioned," Vivian reported. "Designated Overwatch. Range 1,890 meters. But he is protected by a concrete wall, only exposing during firing. I need him to take another shot." "That means more casualties," Strand said grimly. Vivian's jaw tightened. "Corporal Reyes," she said, turning to the young Marine pressed against the tower wall. "I need you to trust me. When I give the word, I need you to fire 3 rounds toward the mountain position. You will not hit anything, but I need the distraction." Reyes stared at her, his eyes wide. "Ma'am," If I expose my position, he will target me. He will target your muzzle flash for approximately 3 seconds, Vivian said. That is my window. But I need you to do this, Corporal. More soldiers will die if we do not end this now. Reyes swallowed hard, then nodded. Yes, ma'am. Just tell me when. In the operations center, Captain Zhang had pulled up enhanced satellite imagery of the Overwatch position. Colonel, she said, that concrete wall provides almost complete cover. Captain Ashford is right. The enemy sniper only exposes during his firing sequence. Maybe 2 seconds of vulnerability. Can she make that shot? Holbrook asked quietly, his earlier antagonism replaced by something approaching respect. Strand looked at the display showing Vivian's position, the distance to target, the tactical geometry of the engagement. I have seen her service record, the classified parts. If anyone can make that shot, it is her. Vivian settled deeper in her firing position, her rifle aimed at the precise point where the enemy sniper would appear when he rose to fire. Her calculations were complete, the wind drift accounted for, the bullet drop compensated. Now it was just a matter of timing, of recognizing the moment, and executing with perfect precision in the narrow window between the enemy's exposure and his ability to fire. Corporal Reyes, on my mark, she said. 3, 2, 1, execute. Reyes rose to a kneeling position and fired 3 rapid shots toward the mountain, his muzzle flash brilliant in the pre-dawn darkness. As Vivian had predicted, the enemy sniper at the Overwatch position shifted slightly, tracking the new muzzle flash, his body rising just above the protective concrete wall as he prepared to engage what he thought was a new threat. 2 seconds of exposure. That was all Vivian needed. Her rifle fired. The bullet crossed 1,890 meters in 2.1 seconds, traveling through cooling air and irregular wind, dropping precisely along the calculated trajectory. The enemy sniper was adjusting his aim on Corporal Reyes when the round struck him, the impact dropping him instantly. 5 down, 1 target remaining. But that final target was not at the mountain shadow position, not at any of the positions they had identified. Vivian realized with sudden clarity that there had never been 4 snipers in this attack. There had been 5. One had remained completely hidden, unfired, waiting for exactly this moment when coalition forces thought the threat was neutralized. Contact, Drummond's voice shouted over the radio. SEAL team taking fire from elevated position, northwest ridge. They had a 6th shooter we never identified. Vivian spun her rifle toward the northwest, scanning for the muzzle flash. The final enemy sniper was firing on Drummond's exposed team, and from his position, he had perfect angles on multiple base sectors. This was the true team leader, the one who had orchestrated the entire operation while remaining invisible until the critical moment. Range 2,340 meters, extreme angle, heavy crosswind, Vivian reported. This is going to be the hardest shot of the night. Master Sergeant Brennan, still standing at the tower entrance, spoke for the first time since the engagement began. Then you better not miss, ma'am. The 6th enemy sniper was methodically firing on Lieutenant Commander Drummond's SEAL team, pinning them in exposed terrain where they had advanced thinking the threat was eliminated. Chief Kapoor reported another team member wounded, her voice tight with frustration as rounds impacted around their position with professional precision. This final shooter was not panicking, not rushing. He was executing his mission with the calm discipline of someone who had survived dozens of engagements by never making mistakes. Vivian studied the northwest ridge through her scope, calculating variables that would have seemed impossible to anyone without her level of training. Range 2,340 meters. Wind gusting between 8 and 12 knots. Direction shifting irregularly as it channeled through the mountain valleys. Thermal gradient severe as pre-dawn air mixed with residual ground heat. Target in partial defilade behind rocky outcropping, only exposing upper torso and rifle during firing sequence. She had perhaps 15 seconds before the enemy sniper eliminated another SEAL team member. Maybe 30 seconds before he shifted position entirely, recognizing that he was now the primary target. The shot required perfection in calculation and execution, with no margin for error. Her breathing slowed to the deep, controlled rhythm she had practiced for thousands of hours. Her heart rate dropped further, each beat deliberate and measured. The chaos of the base around her faded completely, her entire world narrowing to the scope picture and the mental calculations running through her mind like an advanced ballistics computer. Wind from northwest at 10 knots. Gusting, she whispered to herself, working through the math. Bullet flight time, 2.8 seconds at this range and elevation. Drop compensation, 68.3 MOA. Wind drift 4.2 mils left, but gusting pattern suggests waiting for lull. Temperature differential creating updraft in the first 800 meters, then downdraft as air cools over the ridge. Coriolis effect negligible at this range and latitude, but still factored. Target exposing for average of 1.8 seconds per firing cycle. In the operations center, Captain Zhang had pulled up predictive software, trying to calculate the shot difficulty. "Colonel," she said quietly, "the computer is showing this as a less than 40% probability of hit, even for an expert marksman. The variables are too extreme." Strand did not respond, her eyes fixed on the display, showing Vivian's position and the enemy sniper location. Major Holbrook stood beside her, no longer objecting, no longer questioning. He had watched Vivian eliminate 5 professional enemy snipers in conditions that should have been impossible, and his earlier certainty about her lack of qualifications had crumbled into stunned silence. On the northwest ridge, the enemy sniper fired again. Another SEAL hit, this time in the leg. Drummond's voice came through the radio, controlled but urgent. "We need to extract, but we cannot move without taking more casualties. Captain Ashford, if you have a shot, we need it now." Vivian watched the wind indicators, small dust devils visible in her scope as the gusts shifted direction. She needed a 3-second window of relatively stable wind, a brief moment where the complex variables simplified enough for human calculation to overcome chaos. She waited, her finger resting lightly on the trigger, her breathing timed to her heartbeat, every muscle in her body perfectly still. The wind settled, not calm, but consistent. Northwest at 9 knots, steady for perhaps 4 seconds. The enemy sniper rose to fire again, his upper torso and head visible above the rocky protection. Vivian's rifle was already aimed at the precise point where he would appear, her calculations complete, her mind in the perfect state of focused execution that defined elite marksmanship. She fired. For 2.8 seconds, the bullet traveled through darkness and wind and thermal gradients and all the complex physics that made extreme long-range shooting more art than science. It rose on its trajectory, reached apex, began its descent, drifted left exactly as she had calculated, compensated for the mountain wind shear, and impacted the enemy sniper precisely in the center of mass. Lieutenant Commander Drummond watched through his night vision optics as the enemy sniper collapsed, the threat that had pinned his team suddenly and permanently neutralized. For a moment, he could not process what he had just witnessed. A 340-meter shot at night in gusting wind with multiple severe environmental factors executed with single-shot precision. "Target down," he reported, his voice carrying undisguised awe. "Confirm 6th enemy sniper eliminated. Clean hit, center mass. Most incredible shot I have ever seen. Who is this woman?" Colonel Strand keyed the command frequency, her voice carrying across all tactical nets. "All units, this is actual. Threat neutralized. 6 enemy snipers confirmed eliminated. Total engagement time, 18 minutes. Casualty count 14 wounded for killed. Without Captain Ashford's intervention, intelligence projections indicated we would have sustained 60-plus casualties. Stand down from alert status. Medical teams begin full evacuation procedures." The base erupted in controlled activity as the immediate crisis passed. Medical personnel rushed to treat the wounded. Security teams maintained defensive postures while verifying the threat was truly eliminated, and officers began damage assessment and after-action documentation. But underneath the professional military response ran a current of something else, a spreading awareness that they had just witnessed something extraordinary. In the Western Observation Tower, Corporal Reyes remained pressed against the wall, his eyes locked on Vivian as she cleared her rifle with mechanical efficiency. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "what just happened? What are you?" Vivian set the rifle down carefully, her hands steady despite the adrenaline that would hit her system in approximately 90 seconds once her body recognized the engagement was over. "I am a logistics officer, Corporal, who happens to have some specialized training in long-range marksmanship." "Some specialized training," Reyes repeated, his voice breaking slightly. "Ma'am, you just eliminated 6 enemy snipers in 18 minutes. At ranges I did not even know rifles could shoot accurately. That is not specialized training. That is something else entirely." Master Sergeant Brennan descended the tower stairs slowly, his face showing the particular expression of someone whose entire understanding of reality had just been fundamentally revised. He stopped in front of Vivian, came to attention, and rendered a precise salute. "Ma'am," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I was wrong. About everything. About you, about your qualifications, about your right to be here. I apologize for my lack of respect and my failure to recognize excellence when it was standing right in front of me." Vivian returned the salute. "Accepted, Sergeant. We all have our roles to play, and sometimes those roles are not what they appear to be." "What is your role, ma'am?" Brennan asked. "Really?" Before Vivian could respond, Lieutenant Commander Drummond's voice came through her radio. "Captain Ashford, my team is requesting your position. We would like to meet the person who just saved our lives." She descended from the tower as dawn finally broke over the mountains, the darkness that had concealed the enemy snipers giving way to harsh desert light. As she walked across the base toward Drummond's team, soldiers emerged from defensive positions, their eyes following her with expressions that ranged from curiosity to reverence. Word was spreading with the impossible speed of military gossip, each retelling adding details until the story threatened to become legend. Drummond met her halfway, his SEAL team assembled behind him despite their wounds and exhaustion. Chief Kapoor stood at his side, her arm freshly bandaged, her face showing profound respect. "Captain Ashford," Drummond said, extending his hand, "I have operated with some of the finest shooters in the world. Delta, SAS, Israeli Special Forces. What you just did exceeded anything I have ever witnessed. That was not just marksmanship. That was mastery." Vivian shook his hand, uncomfortable with the praise, but recognizing the sincerity behind it. "Thank you, Commander. I'm glad your team is safe." "Safe because of you," Kapoor added. "Ma'am, I have been in special operations for 12 years. I know what good looks like. You're not just good. You're something we do not even have a category for yet." The sun continued rising, revealing the full extent of the night's engagement. On 6 different positions scattered across the terrain surrounding the base, enemy sniper positions were being secured by coalition forces. In each location, they found the evidence of professional military operations, prepared firing lanes, backup weapons, communication equipment, and detailed intelligence files on base operations. These had not been random insurgents. They had been a highly trained special operations cell, and Vivian had eliminated them with a precision that military historians would later struggle to adequately describe. The operations center at 0800 hours bore little resemblance to the chaos of 4 hours earlier. Officers and senior NCOs filled every available space, drawn by word of what had transpired. Colonel Strand stood at the main tactical display, which now showed all 6 eliminated enemy sniper positions marked with confirmed kill indicators. The silence in the room carried a weight that went beyond simple professional respect. "Captain Vivian Ashford," Strand said formally, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Counter Sniper Actual. Classified specialty operator assigned to this forward operating base under administrative cover for the past month. Her official role as logistics officer was designed to maintain operational security while she recovered from a previous mission. Her actual background includes 7 years of advanced counter-sniper operations across 3 continents." Strand pulled up a service record on the main screen, portions of which remained redacted even at this classification level. Captain Ashford holds multiple records for extreme distance sniper eliminations, all of which remain classified for operational security. Prior to tonight's engagement, her confirmed elimination count stood at 89 enemy snipers. She has trained counter-sniper teams for Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, and Allied Special Operations units in 4 different countries. The room remained silent as Strand continued. Tonight, in an 18-minute engagement conducted under combat conditions at night with multiple severe environmental factors, Captain Ashford eliminated 6 highly trained enemy snipers. Shot distances range from 1,420 meters to 2,340 meters. All 6 eliminations were single-shot kills. 0 misses. 0 friendly fire incidents. 0 collateral damage. Spontaneous applause erupted, starting with Lieutenant Commander Drummond and spreading through the assembled personnel. Vivian stood near the back of the room, her expression uncomfortable with the attention, but accepting it with quiet dignity. She was still wearing her combat uniform, dust and sweat stained, having not yet returned to her quarters after the engagement. Major Holbrook stood near the front, his face showing the complex emotions of someone confronting a fundamental error in judgment. As the applause faded, he approached Vivian directly. The room watched, tension rising as everyone remembered his previous antagonism and restrictions. "Captain Ashford," Holbrook said, his voice carrying clearly in the now quiet space. "I owe you an apology that goes far beyond simple words. I was unprofessional, prejudiced, and dangerously wrong in my assessment of your capabilities and your value to this base." He paused, visibly struggling with the admission. "You proved yourself under the most extreme circumstances possible. More importantly, you saved lives while I was actively obstructing you. That failure of leadership rests entirely on my shoulders." Vivian met his eyes. "Major, you were protecting your chain of command and maintaining operational discipline. Those are valid concerns for any executive officer. We all did our jobs last night. That is what matters." "No," Holbrook said firmly. "What matters is that soldiers are alive today because you ignored my restrictions and did what needed to be done. I will be recommending in my official report that my objections and limitations be formally noted as detrimental to mission effectiveness. You deserve better than my interference." He extended his hand. Vivian shook it, the gesture closing a chapter of conflict that had defined much of her time at the base. The assembled officers and NCOs watched the exchange, understanding that they were witnessing something significant, a public acknowledgement of error that many senior officers would never have the courage to make. Captain Zhang approached next, tablet in hand. "Ma'am, I have been running analysis on the enemy sniper cell. Based on recovered intelligence documents and equipment, these were Tier 1 operators. Former military, possibly special forces from 2 different nations, brought together specifically for this operation." She pulled up photographs on her tablet. They had detailed intelligence on our base operations, patrol schedules, defensive positions. They knew our capabilities and they planned accordingly. Which means, Lieutenant Commander Drummond added, stepping forward, that Captain Ashford did not just eliminate 6 random shooters. She took down a coordinated special operations cell that had superior intelligence and advantageous positioning. In 18 minutes, with perfect execution, the tactical analysis will be studied for years, Zhang continued. The shot geometry, the environmental calculations, the target prioritization. "Ma'am, I have degrees in physics and ballistics, and I barely understand how you made some of those shots work." "Practice," Vivian said quietly. "Thousands of hours of practice and a bit of luck with the wind conditions." "That was not luck," Master Sergeant Brennan said from his position near the door. "Ma'am, I have been around military operations my entire adult life. I know the difference between skill and luck. What you did was pure mastery under impossible conditions." The young Marines she had mentored, Corporal Reyes and 2 others, stood together near the back. Reyes looked like he was still processing what he had witnessed, the quiet supply officer who had fixed his rifle revealing herself as perhaps the most lethal operator on the entire base. Colonel Strand called for attention. Intelligence assessment indicates this enemy sniper cell was part of a larger operation targeting coalition bases across the region. Their elimination here represents a significant degradation of enemy capabilities. Captain Ashford's actions have implications far beyond this single base. She turned to Vivian. Captain, your administrative cover is obviously no longer viable. I have received authorization from higher command to formally acknowledge your counter-sniper specialty and integrate you into operational planning for this theater. Your expertise is needed, and after tonight, pretending otherwise would be counterproductive. Understood, Mum, Vivian repeated. There will be a formal commendation, Strand continued, though the full details of your engagement will remain classified at the highest levels. What I can say publicly is that your actions prevented catastrophic casualties and eliminated a significant enemy threat through exceptional tactical skill and courage under fire. The briefing continued for another hour, covering damage assessment, intelligence exploitation from the enemy positions, and operational adjustments based on lessons learned. Throughout it all, Vivian remained a focus of attention, officers and NCOs approaching to offer congratulations or ask technical questions about her engagement methodology. When the briefing finally concluded, she walked out into morning sunlight that was already heating the desert air. The base had returned to normal operations on the surface, but everything had fundamentally changed. Soldiers who had never spoken to her before nodded with respect as she passed. Security teams on the perimeter stood a little straighter when she came near their positions. She found Chief Petty Officer Kapoor near the medical facility, overseeing treatment for the SEAL team members who had been wounded. Kapoor's arm was properly bandaged now, the field dressing replaced with professional medical care. "Ma'am," Kapoor said as Vivian approached, "I wanted to thank you personally. 3 of my team members would not have survived without your intervention. When we were pinned down, when that last shooter had us completely exposed, I thought we were done. Then you made a shot that should not have been possible. I'm glad everyone is safe," Vivian said. "It is more than that," Kapoor replied. "You showed us what excellence really looks like. Not the loud kind, not the kind that demands attention. The quiet kind that just does the job perfectly when it matters most. That is the kind of operator everyone aspires to be." Lieutenant Commander Drummond joined them, having finished his own debrief with Colonel Strand. "Captain Ashford, my team would like to invite you to an informal gathering tonight. Nothing official, just an opportunity to properly thank the person who saved our lives." "That is not necessary, Commander," Vivian said. "Maybe not necessary," Drummond replied, "but important. You operated at a level most of us will never reach. We want to understand how you got there, what it takes to develop that kind of capability. And honestly, we just want to know the person behind the rifle." Vivian considered, then nodded. "I would be honored, Commander." As she walked back toward the warehouse, now fully revealed as something far more than a simple logistics officer, she thought about the photograph in her quarters. Her father at a shooting competition, teaching her the fundamentals that would eventually evolve into the skills that save lives tonight. He had always told her that marksmanship was about more than hitting targets. It was about discipline, patience, and being ready when the moment demanded perfection. She had been ready, and in 18 minutes on a dark morning at Forward Operating Base Sentinel, that readiness had made all the difference. 3 days after the engagement, Forward Operating Base Sentinel had settled into a new rhythm. The operational tempo remained high, but the constant tension of enemy sniper threat had lifted. Soldiers moved with more confidence. Patrols operated without the psychological weight of unseen shooters tracking their movements, and the base itself felt different, like a collective exhale after weeks of held breath. Vivian found herself in an unexpected role. Her cover as a logistics officer was officially maintained for administrative purposes, but everyone on base now understood her true function. Colonel Strand had integrated her into tactical planning sessions, where her analysis of enemy patterns and terrain assessment provided insights that repeatedly proved valuable. Major Holbrook, to his credit, had become one of her strongest advocates, actively seeking her input on security improvements and defensive positioning. The morning briefings had changed character. When Vivian spoke, officers leaned forward to listen. When she pointed out tactical considerations, notes were taken and plans were adjusted. The transformation was complete and irreversible. She was no longer invisible, no longer dismissed, no longer underestimated. But with recognition came new complications. Lieutenant Commander Drummond had requested her assistance in planning follow-up operations against enemy positions throughout the region. Captain Zhang wanted her methodology documented for training purposes. Master Sergeant Brennan had asked her to conduct formal marksmanship instruction for the entire base complement of designated marksmen. The quiet solitude she had maintained for weeks was gone, replaced by constant demands on her time and expertise. She stood on the eastern perimeter at dawn, watching the mountains where 6 enemy snipers had once operated. The positions had been thoroughly searched, yielding intelligence that confirmed Captain Zhang's assessment. The eliminated cell had been part of a coordinated enemy operation, highly trained professionals recruited specifically to target coalition forces. Their loss represented a significant blow to enemy capabilities across the entire theater. Captain Ashford, a voice called from behind her. She turned to find Corporal Reyes approaching with the 2 other young Marines she had mentored. All 3 carried rifles and wore expressions of earnest determination. "Ma'am," Reyes said, "we heard you were conducting a marksmanship class this afternoon. We wanted to ask if we could attend." Officially this time, with proper authorization and everything. Vivian smiled slightly. "Of course, Corporal. 1,400 hours of the Northeast Range. Bring your rifles, 2 magazines each, and be prepared to unlearn some habits that are holding you back." "Yes, ma'am," all 3 replied in unison, their enthusiasm evident. After they left, Chief Petty Officer Kapoor appeared, her wounded arm still bandaged but clearly healing well. She carried an equipment case that she set down carefully near Vivian's position. "Ma'am," Kapoor said, "Commander Drummond asked me to deliver this. It is a gift from the team, a token of appreciation for what you did." "That is not necessary," Vivian said. "Humor us," Kapoor replied, opening the case to reveal a custom rifle scope, clearly expensive and professionally engraved. The engraving read, "To counter sniper actual, 6 for 6 in 18 minutes, with profound gratitude from SEAL Team Sentinel." Vivian studied the scope, genuinely moved by the gesture. "This is exceptional craftsmanship. They wanted you to know that what you did mattered," Kapoor said. "Not just tactically, but personally. You save lives, ma'am. Specific lives. Team members with families, with futures, with everything to lose. That deserves more than official commendations. It deserves to be remembered." "I will treasure this," Vivian said quietly. "Thank you, Chief." Kapoor nodded and turned to leave, then paused. "Ma'am, can I ask you something? How do you handle it? The pressure of those shots, knowing that if you miss, people die. How do you stay calm enough to execute under those conditions?" Vivian considered the question carefully. "You accept that fear is part of the process," she said. "You acknowledge it, work alongside it, but do not let it control your actions. And you trust your training absolutely. Thousands of repetitions build muscle memory, so deep that your body knows what to do even when your mind is overwhelmed. The calm is not the absence of fear. It is the presence of preparation." Kapoor absorbed this, then smiled. "That is exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you, ma'am." The afternoon marksmanship class drew 32 students, far more than Vivian had anticipated. Master Sergeant Brennan had organized the session with his characteristic efficiency, coordinating range time, ammunition allocation, and safety protocols. He stood beside her as the students assembled, his presence a statement of support that did not go unnoticed. Vivian began with fundamentals, stripping away the complexity to focus on breathing, trigger control, and sight picture. She demonstrated techniques using language that made advanced concepts accessible, drawing on her years of teaching specialized operators. The students, ranging from young Marines like Corporal Reyes to experienced NCOs, listened with complete attention. "Marksmanship is not about forcing the rifle to do what you want," she explained. "It is about creating the conditions where the rifle can do what it was designed to do." Your job is to be perfectly still, perfectly calm, and let the weapon complete its function without interference. Every movement you make, every tension in your body, every uncontrolled breath degrades accuracy. Perfection in shooting is the art of doing nothing incorrectly. She worked with each student individually, identifying specific issues and providing targeted corrections. A Marine sergeant who had struggled with wind reading for years suddenly understood the principles when she explained them using mountain terrain as visual reference. A young soldier who flinched during recoil learned to embrace the rifle's movement rather than fight it. By the end of the 3-hour session, every student had improved measurably. As the class concluded and students cleaned their weapons, Lieutenant Commander Drummond approached. "That was impressive teaching, Captain. You made advanced concepts accessible without dumbing them down. That is a rare skill." "I have had good teachers myself," Vivian replied. "I am just passing forward what I learned." Drummond pulled out a tablet showing operational maps. "I wanted to discuss the regional counter-sniper strategy. Intelligence suggests enemy forces are attempting to recruit replacement snipers after losing their primary cell. We need to develop proactive measures rather than waiting for the next attack." They spent an hour reviewing terrain analysis, discussing predictive positioning, and planning operations that would deny enemy snipers the advantageous positions they favored. Drummond's tactical experience, combined with Vivian's specialized knowledge, created a comprehensive approach that Colonel Strand would later approve for theater-wide implementation. As evening approached, Vivian walked back toward her quarters, passing groups of soldiers who now greeted her by name. The isolation she had experienced during her first weeks on base had been replaced by integration into the community, but she found herself missing the quiet anonymity. Recognition brought responsibilities, expectations, and a visibility that made her professional work more complicated. She entered her quarters to find a message from Colonel Strand requesting her presence at 1900 hours. When she arrived at the colonel's office, she found Strand reviewing classified communications with an expression that suggested significant developments. "Captain Ashford," Strand said, gesturing to a chair, "I have received new orders regarding your status. Higher command has been tracking the situation here, and your performance during the engagement has generated considerable attention at levels well above this theater." Vivian sat, waiting for the inevitable complications that accompanied high-level attention. "You're being reassigned," Strand continued. "There is a specialized counter-sniper training program being established for multinational special operations forces. They want you to lead the instruction, develop the curriculum, and train the next generation of operators in advanced techniques." She paused, studying Vivian's reaction. "This is a significant opportunity, Captain. Your expertise could save lives across multiple theaters of operation." "When do I leave?" Vivian asked quietly. 2 weeks, Strand replied. "Time enough to complete current obligations here and conduct transition briefings." She leaned back in her chair. "I will miss having you on my base, Captain. You have changed the culture here in ways that will persist long after you leave." That night, at the informal gathering with Drummond's SEAL team, Vivian found herself surrounded by operators who wanted to hear her stories, learn from her experience, and simply spend time with someone they had come to deeply respect. The conversation ranged from technical discussions of ballistics to personal stories of deployments past, creating bonds that transcended rank and specialty. As the evening concluded, Drummond raised a glass. "To Captain Vivian Ashford," he said, "Counter Sniper Actual, who taught us that the most dangerous weapons are often the quietest, who showed us that excellence does not need to announce itself, and who reminded us that underestimating people based on assumptions is the fastest way to miss genuine capability." The team echoed the toast, and Vivian accepted their recognition with quiet grace, knowing that this moment represented something important. She had come to FOB Sentinel as an invisible logistics officer, hidden behind administrative cover, ordered to stay low profile while higher command decided her fate. She was leaving as a recognized expert whose skills had saved lives and whose legend would be told in operations centers across the theater for years to come. The final morning at Forward Operating Base, Sentinel arrived with the same pre-dawn darkness that had marked Vivian's first day. She stood in the warehouse one last time, conducting a final inventory check that was as much ritual as necessity. The crates were organized exactly as she had left them, ammunition counted and logged, supply chains coordinated for her replacement. Everything in order, everything accounted for, the logistics officer role fulfilled even as it had become the least important aspect of her time here. Corporal Reyes found her there, as she had known he would. He carried his rifle, freshly cleaned, and wore the expression of someone who had grown considerably in a short time. "Ma'am," he said, "I wanted to catch you before you left. To say thank you, properly." "You do not need to thank me, Corporal," Vivian replied. "You did the work. You made the improvements. I just pointed you in the right direction." "It was more than that, ma'am," Reyes said. "You showed me what excellence looks like. Not the loud kind that demands recognition, but the quiet kind that just does the job right when it matters." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I am putting in my application for Scout Sniper training. Because of what you taught me. Because you proved that this kind of mastery is possible if you are willing to put in the work." Vivian felt genuine pride at his words. "Then make me proud, Corporal. Remember that the shot is the easiest part if you have done everything else correctly. Preparation, discipline, patience. Those are what separate good shooters from great ones." "I will remember, ma'am," Reyes said. He came to attention and rendered a perfect salute. "Thank you for everything, Captain Ashford." She returned the salute, then watched him leave, knowing that her impact on this base would extend through soldiers like him, carrying forward the lessons and the approach long after she departed. The morning briefing gathered the full complement of base leadership one final time. Colonel Strand stood at the front, with Major Holbrook, Captain Zhang, Master Sergeant Brennan, and Lieutenant Commander Drummond's SEAL team all present. The operations center that had witnessed so much chaos 2 weeks earlier now showed calm efficiency, the tactical displays marking a region significantly safer because of actions taken here. "Captain Ashford," Strand began, "this is your official departure briefing. Before you leave, I want to ensure everyone understands the full scope of what was accomplished during your time at this base." She pulled up statistical displays showing casualty rates before and after the enemy sniper elimination. In the 6 weeks prior to the engagement, we sustained 14 killed and 23 wounded from sniper fire. In the 2 weeks since Captain Ashford neutralized the enemy cell, we have had 0 sniper casualties. Regional intelligence indicates enemy forces have been unable to reconstitute an effective sniper capability. The impact extends beyond just this base, Captain Zhang added. The intelligence recovered from the eliminated positions has enabled operations across 4 different sectors. 7 additional enemy cells have been disrupted based on information you helped secure. Lieutenant Commander Drummond stepped forward. "Ma'am, on behalf of my team and every operator who will benefit from the training program you are establishing, thank you. You set a standard that will influence special operations doctrine for years to come." Major Holbrook spoke next, his voice carrying the weight of genuine respect. "Captain Ashford, I made significant errors in judgment regarding your capabilities and your value to this command. Those errors could have cost lives. I want the record to show that your performance under the most extreme circumstances possible demonstrated not just technical skill, but the kind of character that defines exceptional officers. This base is better because you were here, and I am better for having witnessed your example." Master Sergeant Brennan stood. "Ma'am, you taught me that excellence can exist in forms I had not learned to recognize. You showed patience with my skepticism and professionalism in the face of my disrespect. The Marines and soldiers on this base have a better understanding of what true capability looks like because you were willing to demonstrate it when it mattered most. Thank you for that education." Vivian stood, uncomfortable as always with prolonged attention, but recognizing the importance of the moment. "Colonel Strand, Major Holbrook, all of you, serving at this base has been an honor. What happened here was not the result of one person's actions. It was the result of a professional military team working together under extreme pressure. Commander Drummond's SEAL team, the security forces, the medical personnel, everyone played their role. I just happened to have a specific skill set that was needed at a specific moment. She paused, her voice taking on a more serious tone. But I hope what people remember from this is not just about shooting. It is about preparation meeting opportunity. It is about doing the work when no one is watching so that you are ready when everyone is watching. It is about never assuming that you understand someone's capabilities based on surface appearances. Every person on this base has skills and experiences that might not be obvious until the moment demands them. That is the real lesson. The briefing concluded with formal transfer of duties, final coordination on the intelligence exploitation, and logistics for her departure. When the official business finished, the room did not empty. Officers and NCOs lingered, wanting final moments with someone who had fundamentally changed their understanding of excellence under pressure. At noon, the transport helicopter arrived. Vivian stood on the landing pad with her sparse belongings, her rifle case secured, everything she had brought with her now, leaving exactly as it had arrived. Colonel Strand approached for final words. "Your next assignment will be challenging," Strand said. "Training multinational forces, developing curriculum, establishing doctrine. But if anyone can do it, you can. You have a gift for making complex concepts accessible and for recognizing potential in people that others miss." "Thank you, ma'am," Vivian replied, "for trusting me, for giving me the space to work, and for understanding what I needed even when I could not ask for it directly." "Take care of yourself, Captain," Strand said. "The world needs more operators like you, people who do exceptional work without needing recognition for it." The SEAL team assembled near the landing pad, a final show of respect as Vivian boarded. Chief Kapoor stood at the front, her wounded arm now healing well, her expression showing the gratitude of someone whose life had been saved by extraordinary skill. As the helicopter lifted off, Vivian looked down at forward operating base sentinel. Soldiers stood at various positions, hands raised in salute, acknowledging her departure. She saw Corporal Reyes on the eastern perimeter, saw Master Sergeant Brennan near the operations center, saw the warehouse, where she had spent quiet mornings organizing supplies while preparing for a moment no one else knew was coming. The base grew smaller as the helicopter gained altitude, the mountains beyond revealing the 6 positions where enemy snipers had once operated. Empty now, secured and neutralized, no longer a threat to coalition forces. 18 minutes of engagement that had eliminated a carefully constructed enemy capability and saved dozens of lives. If this story moved you, drop a comment below and tell us your favorite moment, or share if you have ever witnessed someone prove themselves when no one believed in them. Maybe you have served alongside someone like Captain Ashford, or maybe you have been underestimated yourself. We would love to hear your story. The helicopter turned southwest, heading toward Vivian's next assignment, her next challenge, her next opportunity to apply skills that few possessed and fewer still could execute at her level. Behind her, forward operating base Sentinel continued its operations, forever changed by the quiet logistics officer who had revealed herself as one of the most lethal countersnipers in military history. On the operations center wall, a new photograph had been added to the memorial displays. But this one was different from the others. It was not a memorial to the fallen, but a commendation, a reminder of what was possible when preparation met opportunity. Captain Vivian Ashford, counter-sniper actual. 6 confirmed eliminations in 18 minutes. 0 friendly casualties under her protection. A legend that would be told in briefing rooms and training facilities for generations. She came to forward operating base Sentinel as a hidden asset, ordered to maintain a low profile while higher command debated her future. She left as a recognized master whose impact would ripple through military operations across multiple theaters. And somewhere on another forward base, she was probably organizing supply crates right now, quiet and unassuming, waiting patiently for the next moment when extraordinary skill would be needed to save lives. The most dangerous weapons the soldiers at FOB Sentinel learned are often the ones you never see coming. The ones that look like logistics officers conducting inventory. The ones that wait in silence until the moment demands perfection. the ones that execute with such flawless precision that the impossible becomes routine. Captain Vivian Ashford had taught them that lesson in 18 Minutes of Darkness, and no one who witnessed it would ever forget.